On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, how many All-Stars will the Thunder have? What will their starting five look like? And are they going to win the NBA championship?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel, we're joined by Michael Martin at Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube, at Michael on Sports on Twitter. And we're going to preview the Thunder season. This is a preview extravaganza. Michael, the table setter. We have Brian Rabar. We have Andrew Schluck coming as well. And we'll get you set for Denver and beyond. But today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season big with $200 guaranteed at FanDuel and bonus bets. As long as you place your first $5 bet. Win or lose, you get that $200. Michael, this is one of the most anticipated Thunder seasons in OKC history. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling excited. We're going to get some takes on wax here and see later on. We'll revisit it and see how wrong we were.
We will definitely have to revisit this as we're going to have Michael on the show most Mondays throughout the season, so you can look forward to that. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast from, including on YouTube, where you can also find Let's Talk Thunder. Michael, the Thunder season's right around the corner. We have gotten some injury news. We've talked Hartenstein injury on Friday. You can give your thoughts on that. But in that game Thursday against the Hawks, Jdub rolled his ankle. He's been listed as day-to-day, but aren't we all? I think that even in that ambiguous update, when you couple it with ESPN saying it was non-severe, Tim McMahon, and you couple it with what we've seen at practice over the last 2 days, where at least today he was moving really well. He kind of went through his normal post-practice routine, and Mark did say he did more in practice today than he did yesterday, and they don't play again until Thursday. It feels like this is completely a guess, but it feels like Jdub will be all right to start the season.
Yeah, I'd assume that he's there to go on opening night. Ankles are weird. Of course, things can change. Maybe he tweaks it in a practice, knock on wood. We hope that doesn't happen. But I think the Thunder are just going the cautionary route of not going out and saying he's going to play if you're not for sure. But I don't think this is going to be something that's a very big deal. Maybe he'll get through a little bit of rust, but I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that'll be fine too. And he brings up the first question of this preview. What lineup will be starting the most games for the Thunder this season? So we can all admit that they're probably going to change things. They'll probably have tweaks here and there of one night they have a double big lineup once Hartenstein's healthy. One night it's Caruso and swap of Giddey, potentially a night where neither one starts. But overall, when the season's all said and done, what would you consider the Thunder starting five?
I think the one that they're going to go with most is Shai, Dort, Caruso, Jdub, and Chet. I think that one's just the most versatile when you're playing in a regular season. Of course, you're going to go two bigs, but I think there's only a handful of teams where that's probably needed to start a game. But I think that five is probably the most versatile on both ends and most well-rounded. So I'm excited to see it, but how are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm excited to see what it looks like and what they end up doing. I just think that it's so much easier to flow a game with Hartenstein on the bench because all that Caruso provides you as a tone setter defensively, on top of how good Chet is, I mean, he's an elite defender, on top of how I think that Jdub is an underrated defender, going to take another step this year. Shai is one of the best defenders for a superstar in the NBA with that qualifier. So I love the idea of that lineup, setting a tone, really igniting things because they can do it in multiple ways. I still think that that's an incredible offensive lineup, but if maybe you're missing a couple shots out of the gate, you know that they're going to be able to turn defense into offense with easy buckets. And I just think it's easier to weave in and out of a double big lineup whenever you start Hartenstein on the bench versus whenever you start them together. And now you got to do the math on, okay, well, how do we patchwork this together where we're not left in situations where we've got to spell both Chet and Hartenstein?
Yeah, the staggering is going to be way different if you have to start both those guys. It's a good problem to have that many good players, but I'm with you. Hartenstein's playmaking off the bench, I think, is going to be incredibly valuable this year, and the bench is really, really talented, but what a luxury it is to have where you can put Lou Dort on the best offensive player on the other team. You have Chet protecting the rim, and all NBA defender Alex Caruso gets to roam and just cause havoc wherever.
Yeah, Caruso is going to have a phenomenal season. We'll talk more about him coming up, but anchoring that starting five is going to be Shai, Jdub, and Chet. Those are the pieces that for sure are not going to move. I think that Dort would be considered someone who's going to start every game as well because his skill set, I don't think necessarily plays off the bench in the sense of it kind of neuters him in a lot of ways because his focal point is defense. And when you've seen Dort play with lineups where like there's not a ton of other offensive talent in the sense of like shot generation, that's whenever you see him fall into some bad habits I think you want to protect them from. So I'd go as far as to say like those four are going to start most games for the Thunder. And the fifth spot is a little bit revolving. But I know some people are down on Dort in that capacity. But the big three, we know Shai will be at All-Star Weekend in San Francisco at the Chase Center. His locker is already ready. Will anyone be joining him on Sunday night in the All-Star game in the Bay Area?
One teammate will be joining him. I was doing the math. So 3 All-Stars are gone from last year's team between Paul George, Kawhi, and Kat. So those spots are open. I'm going to say that Wemby takes one of those spots. I think it comes down to somewhat of just the numbers game where Chet doesn't make it because of the amount of bigs. But I think Jdub is going to have a really, really good case. He's going to have a really good season. That's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting some growth from him. And as we know, the reserves are voted on by the coaches, and he kind of ticks all the boxes the coaches want. Plays really hard, really efficient, good teammate, plays really hard defense, and he's going to be on a winning team. I think that Dub and Shai will be together for All-Star Weekend.
So I like that prediction. I think that it's the three horsemen that are running for this in Oklahoma City anyway. I think that the Thunder, even with the Hartenstein injury, and that's kind of dampened some people a little bit, I think the Thunder are still just going to be this astronomical rocket ship up the Western Conference standings, and they're going to have the win total necessary to warrant an additional All-Star or two next to Shai. And my bold prediction is that Shai will have 2 teammates with him at All-Star Weekend, with the caveat being when this is all said and done. So maybe it's not 2 with him on the initial announcement, but we know every year there's a run of injury replacements. There's a run of guys who just can't participate for one reason or another, whether it's a severe or minor injury. And that's when I think for sure by then the Thunder will have 3 All-Stars, because I just look at both these guys and I think that they've both made such massive leaps if the preseason translates, which is a small sample size. But for Jdub, if he is going to shoot more threes and still be close to the efficiency he was a year ago, that transcends his counting stats, which, if we're being honest, is what people are looking at when they talk about All-Star and talk about getting them into the game. These 2 guys made made huge winning impacts for a 57-win team a year ago. They played at an All-Star level a year ago. They didn't even sniff the All-Star game because they didn't have the counting stats and they just didn't have that reputation yet. But now you have all the expectation in the world. Everybody's talking about you from the word go instead of lagging behind until December or January. And I think that they've both made strides to get their counting stats up to snuff. With Jdub, it's the 3-point shooting. With Chet, it's been his relentless pursuit of the rim, and that's put him on the free throw line. I know the free throw numbers have been shaky a little bit, but I totally buy into that being corrected in the regular season. So if he's going to be attacking hard downhill, getting easy shots either via layups and dunks or the free throw line, and Jdub is shooting more threes, then those 2 guys will cement themselves as, of course, the second and third option. You'll be on pace to win who knows how many games by the time that the voting and teams are all picked out. And I do think that when that point comes, Shai, Jdub, and Chet will be on the All-Star team when the game tips off.
That's a good point about the sort of the injury replacements. That's not something I was super considering. I was looking more just, the All-Star game, they don't want to have a bunch of bigs. You're going to have Jokic, you're going to have Wemby is going to make it. Anthony Davis is just one of those guys, like you mentioned. He has the resume, he has the respect of guys, but he's also frequently injured. I'm going to go with 2 guys, but I wouldn't be surprised if Chet makes it. It's just, as you know, the NBA is as talented as it's ever been, so some guys are going to get snubbed, and this might be I think this is the last year if Chet doesn't make it. This will be the last year it will be like that.
So sticking with the conversation of accolades, number 1, how many, if any, all defensive players will the Thunder have? And number 2, you got to pick one. Only one on this elite team. Who's the best defender in Oklahoma City?
So I have one player making all defense, and it's not even the best defender, but I'll get into that later. I think it's Caruso. He has the pedigree. And the thing is, like, Chet's going to have a really good case, Dort's going to have a really good case, and that's what kind of hurts them, is they're going to cannibalize their own votes. Like, Rylan, would you be surprised if all these guys got votes between Caruso, Dort, Chet, Hartenstein, Dub, Cason, and Shai?
No, I mean, that's not surprising at all. I think that that's going to happen to this team.
Exactly, and that's just going to spread it out. So I think some guys are going to leap over them who are not better defenders just because they kind of get watered down by all playing on the same team. And then as for the best defender on the team, I think that's going to be Chet in this roamer role whenever we see him with Hartenstein. I'm really, really excited to see that. Chet was already awesome last year as a rim protector, and he's getting that much smarter, that much stronger, and he's going to have even better defenders around him on the perimeter. I think that he is going to really, really surprise some people and get on the map for a lot of casuals who are not aware of just how good he is.
Yeah, I could see that happening for the Thunder, where it comes down to like there's too many cooks in the kitchen, where it's like whenever you have any other award or vote where you can kind of split the vote a little bit, especially whenever you look at the people who take the voting seriously are going to be trying to dive into this team and say, okay, well, who amongst this group has the most impact? And I think that the more you try to figure out that question, the more you turn your brain into mush of like, you just have to acknowledge these are all elite guys who there's no one reason why this defense is good. Unlike other teams, it's going to be a collective effort. So the people who do like the very dirty work, they're not going to be able to figure it out. And the people who, aren't taking their vote as seriously as they should, they're just going to cast it to a guy like you said, Caruso, who has the pedigree, if they're going to vote for someone from the Thunder at all. So I just think that it's going to be difficult to have as many as you might think that they should or would expect them to have. For example, like Shai. Like I think that Shai will have plenty of votes because he's going to be just incredible at stealing the basketball as he was a year ago. And of course, he's a superstar, so people are going to see his name and just kind of vote for him for everything. Whereas I wouldn't have Shai in like the top three of vote getters for the Thunder for all defensive team, not to knock his defensive effort, but I just don't think that he'll be in that vein that I think he will be top three when the voting is all said and done, which is just a testament more so to the voters than it is to what the Thunder have or who the Thunder have or who should actually make it.
It's a good problem to have, to be so deep that you can't even choose the best three defenders on a team. And we saw this last season with the Celtics where some fans and their team got upset about some of the all-NBA stuff and all defense. And they ran into a similar problem that we're sort of projecting here of you're just going to have so many guys that it's going to be spread too thin. But I think they get at least one guy, and this team's going to get a lot of credit for how good they are defensively. They're going to be among the best in the league, but I think only one gets that accolade.
Coming up, we'll talk about the Thunder. How many wins will they get? Who will win the NBA championship this year? We'll go through NBA awards and much more. But first, want to say right now about our good friends over at BetterHelp. There's plenty of things to scare you around Halloween. Me personally, deathly afraid of spiders, but more so than that, there are things that scare you in your real life that you could really use help with, that you can talk through and gain the help you need. That's where BetterHelp comes in, because therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's an entirely online solution designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited entirely around your schedule. So you go there, you fill out their brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find the right therapist for you in that format, and then you're going to overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Monday with Michael Martin at Michael on Sports on Twitter, and Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. Michael, we've talked through the defense and the all-star accolades, but when you look at this Thunder team, who do you think will take their game to the next level? Whatever that level is for them, who do you think will take their game to the next level this year in Oklahoma City?
I'm going with Chet. I mentioned that he's the best defender on the team. I think he has the most room to grow on both ends, just in terms of his role and things like that. And I would really be surprised to see him take any steps back. But I'm thinking that... Sorry, let me fix this. I apologize. I don't know why it's doing this. Okay, there we go. Sorry. Yeah, with Chet, I think that he has a really good case to make the biggest leap this season on both ends. He's going to be really good defensively, and then offensively, we've seen the playmaking, we've seen him off the dribble, we've seen that he's working on his shot, he's getting stronger, he's going to be in better shape, and we're seeing those more opportunities that the Thunder are kind of feeding him. So I think that he's going to take the biggest leap just because you combine both ends.
I could see Chet being the answer because I fully buy into, like we said in the first segment, him taking an all-star leap, and that's going to be perceived as the biggest leap. I also think that he can take a leap not only from what he individually have done, but just as a team and as this team grows. So I think that Shai's gotten better as a playmaker. I think that Jdub's gotten better as a playmaker. I think that Caruso is a better setup man in the kind of connective offense than what they had previously. And so for those reasons, I think that you can see Chet benefit more from spoon-fed buckets. He got some last year, of course, but it was not to the extent to maximize him. So I think that those two guys improving their playmaking specifically can maximize him. Playing off of Hartenstein a little bit can maximize him offensively and really help him go to that next level. To not take the same guy that you did, I'll take Cason Wallace. I just think that there's something still there for him to go get. And I don't know what that looks like. I look at this team, and I think that they've done a wonderful job of checking off nearly every single box. And this offseason is an A++ by every metric. But you left the Dallas series, wanting the Thunder to have a better table setter for their secondary unit. Hartenstein could fix that issue. A.J. Mitchell could fix that issue. Caruso, Cason, you have a lot of guys who could fix the issue. Who's going to fix the issue and put Jdub and put Chet in more advantageous spots whenever Shai's not on the floor and really just help them get along and get easier looks? If Cason can fill that role on top of what we know he can do as a 3-and-D player in those lineups, then I just think that you look at Cason through an entirely different lens, and it's kind of not too much of a stretch to anticipate him doing that because he was able to do it in college and before that.
No, you know me too well. You're tugging at my heartstrings. I'm a massive Cason fan and believer, and I think he's going to take a big leap this season as well. I think you're going to see a lot more on-ball creation from him. And it's crazy to think about that he's not even one of the top 3 young players that you get most excited with on this Thunder team. And so many other teams, he would be like the one prospect where you're looking forward to the future of like, this guy could be really special. And I think that you are totally right of the Thunder are going to need someone to supplement some of the playmaking that they lost with Josh. And I think Cason is going to be one of those guys. A lot of last year, it was just kind of he was, catch and shoot on threes, which he was really good at, in attacking closeouts. We saw some of the mid-range in the preseason and things like that, and I'm looking forward to see what he looks like with extended minutes.
Yeah, I think that with Cason, you also look at him and defensively, we kind of think of him as this like finished product. This is a guy who was so good last year, and that's kind of what he is. That was his first ever crack at defending NBA level athletes and seeing the pictures. And now with a whole offseason of he got stronger, he looks more explosive and athletic, and he's now gotten a body of work against these players. I just think that he can even uptick a little bit in that area too, just by it being more familiar to him and more comfortable to him. So I just think that he as a player is being overlooked a little bit in terms of how much more room there is to grow. And he's kind of already being put in this box where it's like, no, dude, he's a top 10 pick for a reason. He's like a genuine lottery pick for a reason. Now, Michael, skipping ahead here to I think one of the biggest questions of the season preview episode. What stat, storyline, player, just what do you think will be the definition of this season? What will define if they end up getting to their end goal, which is a lofty goal of winning their first championship?
Well, I don't want to just skip past the regular season, but mine is more towards the playoffs, and I'm just thinking about 3-point variance. We all know what happened with P.J. Washington last year, and that's when you have a deep run like that, you're going to need some luck. But guys like Chet dropped to around 23%, Cason to 32%, Wiggins to 30%, and you just can't have that. So if the guys are hitting at the rate that we know they're capable of and that they do in the regular season, I think that's going to do a lot of work. And then as far as the regular season, what defines it, I think it's going to be those two big lineups.
Yeah, the two big lineups will be a big deal to sort through when to deploy them, how they play off of each other. I was encouraged by the preseason. It's a very small sample size, but the fact that they looked so comfortable already was a good sign, because I anticipated, hey, this is going to look clunky at times a little bit between these two guys, but they were off and running. It's a shame that we have to delay that for 5 or 6 weeks to see it again. In that same vein as your first point, what would define the season to me is who becomes comfortable enough to have a PJ Washington series. One of the stark differences in Dallas and Oklahoma City last year, in a series that went down to the wire, in a series where everybody could have won, in a series where I think that we all look back on it and say that was the best series of the postseason. The defining difference in that series was PJ Washington was willing to take those shots, and the Thunder were passive. They kept working for great shots. Spoiler alert, you're not going to get a perfect shot in the postseason. These teams are too good. They're too locked in. That they're scouting you too hard. Whereas like in the regular season, people have these dreams of like teams scouting for their opponent. In the regular season, you're really self-scouting the entire time and not particularly focused on how to stop that individual matchup. You're working on yourself. Now all that attention goes to you. And so the Thunder kept working for these perfect shots that never came. Someone has to be willing to just take a good or okay shot, even if they're not one of the guys. And last year, everybody but Shai was passing up good to okay shots. And I think that that's why, if I had to guess, that you were seeing Mark harp on Wiggins. You've got to up your three-point volume. Jdub, up your three-point volume. And that similar three-point line of work with you, where you just need to see somebody be comfortable enough to take big shots in big games. And between all of the different options, I feel pretty good that that'll happen. You just have to actually see it.
Yeah, no, I mean, we went through a stretch last year where it just felt like these guys can't all go cold at the same time. And I think that experience is going to have a breakthrough for one of these shooters, whether it's Isaiah Joe, whether it's Wiggins, like you mentioned, Cason Wallace. I think that was a good experience. And you also had a guy like Caruso who has championship experience and pedigree. I think that we're going to get to that point in the season and we're going to have some more reliable shooting from the Thunder.
So coming up, will the Thunder win the title? Who will stand in their way? And so much more. But first, I want to say right now, but our good friends over at FanDuel, the NFL season is in full swing. College football, a mess right now in the state of Oklahoma, except for UCO. But basketball season is here, and you can start the season big at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Whether it's in the middle of a game or you're looking for spreads, player props, over-unders, go there right now and place your first $5 down. When you do, you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed just by going to FanDuel. And right now, the Thunder will start their season on Thursday in Denver. The Thunder are 2-point underdogs, which last week, prior to the Hartenstein injury, there were 2.5-point underdogs, according to FanDuel. Now, just 2-point underdogs against Denver. You can jump on that if you want to at FanDuel.com. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. Michael, between Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso, if you had to only pick one, who do you think is the biggest addition this offseason?
I think it's Hartenstein, just because he gives them a different element that they can play with, of having multiple bigs out on the floor at the same time. That's not a shot at Caruso by any means, but we've kind of seen these 5-guard lineups before, not with a guy as good as him is in that 5th spot. But I really do think that just having the option to play double bigs, which we've seen the rebounding issues in the past, I think that's going to the tail. We'll see in the end, but I think time will tell that was the more important one.
The landscape in the NBA, I think that parity is the biggest word thrown around right now, and you see these teams who are fighting atop the West. And we did our Locked On roundtable with Locked On Mavs, Nuggets, Suns, myself. Like, we were all up there advocating for the teams that we cover, and like Mavs and Nuggets, to some varying extents, believe they should be the favorites. When you look at the big picture of the NBA right now, who do you think would stand in their way at getting to their end goal? Obviously, Boston's there. Anyone else out east, and who out west do you think is going to stand in their way, be the biggest thorn in their side?
I don't know if they'll be in their way, but I'm really just interested in the Knicks matchup. Just seeing that team, just another stretch big, a bunch of wings. And then on the West side, we know the usual suspects, so I don't want to hit them. I think the Lakers are still an interesting matchup just because of LeBron and AD and just the mismatches they cause and their experience and all those things. But I'm curious to hear what you think because the West, whenever you sent me some of these questions and I was reviewing them, that was one of the harder ones for me.
Yeah, I think that in the Western Conference, I still look at the Dallas, Denver, Minnesota pairing as the pairing. I am a huge fan of Phoenix. I think that Phoenix is awesome. I think Phoenix, though, against the Thunder specifically, that's the team where their depth shows up in a bad way. Whereas I think you can get through it a little bit, if you're playing Dallas, especially if we get the Klay Thompson of the last, half a year or whatever. So I think you can get through it if you're Phoenix going up against Dallas. But the Thunder are just so deep, and they've shown that they have a coach who's willing to buck trends and buck the norm, even in the playoffs, and play deep into his rotation to where it's the Thunder's fresh legs, and those non-KD, non-Booker minutes are just going to be absolutely killer. So like the Suns, I say that as like the Suns are a spunky team that I really think can impress. I don't think that they can, be someone who sticks out in a negative way for the Thunder. I guess my team past Denver, Boston, Minnesota, and Dallas would be Memphis, because I look at the Lakers' identity for being a team who they were no title contender, but man, did the Thunder labor against them every single time. And Minnesota can kind of match that identity with Edey in the paint, and cramming things up down there. Jaren Jackson Jr. roaming off of him, Desmond Bane, and then you have the athletic John Morant. Like, you have these guys who can pack you in the mid-range, and then it's up to you to actually take and make the three-point shots, which we'll see if the Thunder follow through with their plan of doing so. But they're a team that can really just compact the floor defensively, and then offensively, when you have John, you have a three-point shooter like Bane. We'll see how Edey looks in that mix. We know Jaren Jackson Jr. is a really good player. I think that of all the teams, Memphis is still up there for me. I'm so curious to see that matchup. But at the end of the day, I do think that despite the parity talk, we'll see Thunder, Dallas, Denver, Minnesota just absolutely going to war out west.
Yeah, I like the Memphis one. One of my bold predictions was that they will be in the top four. They'll beat out one of the core four teams that we've mentioned between the Thunder. They're not beating the Thunder out, but the Wolves, the Mavericks, and Denver. I think that Memphis is really going to surprise some people. People forget that they were the second seed just a couple of years ago, and just how good they are with Ja as the engine of that offense. And defensively, like, the grit and grind stuff is sort of like, it's a meme, we talk about it, but they are a really tough physical team, like you mentioned, with that sort of Lakers comp, and it's going to be interesting to see what they look like versus this completely different version of the Thunder compared to when the Grizzlies were playing good basketball last time.
All right, Michael, it's time. Your official can't come back from prediction. The Thunder will win how many games?
I'm going to go with 61 games.
Okay, I like 61. I like the 60 number. I think that this team, even though people are kind of sitting back on them after the Hartenstein stuff, it's only 5 to 6 weeks. And if there's ever a good time to get hurt, it's start of the season, and it's whenever you have a schedule that on paper looks pretty soft in terms of how deep the Thunder are and how good they are. I think that they navigate through this 5 and 6 weeks, and I think they're going to get 60-plus wins this year.
Yeah, I feel really good about that. The last few 60-win teams that we've seen, they have sort of similar DNA to the Thunder of really good defensive teams, and then offensively, you can kind of plug and play a lot of guys, so you're not too worried about an injury here and there. Like, obviously, if you lose Shai for months, or Chet, or Dub, or you miss even those guys for a few weeks and it's all at the same time, that can really throw a wrench into things. But I feel like the Thunder have the depth and good enough coaching and just their style of play to sort of just insulate themselves even against that if, injuries do come.
So starting our NBA portion of this, and we're going to rapid fire through that, but if the Thunder win 60-plus games, I imagine they're the top 2 seed in the West, probably the top seed in the West. Do they get to the NBA Finals? How far do they achieve? Where do they end up in the postseason?
I'm saying they get to the finals. If you want to go to finals picks, we can go to that right now, or we can wait. But I think we get a rematch with the Mavericks in the finals, and we see the Thunder get over that hump and then make it to the NBA Finals.
So you've got Thunder Mavs in the Western Conference Finals. Then in the NBA Finals, the Thunder, of course, will play the East champion. So who are the other two members of your Final Four?
I had the Knicks and the Celtics. I mean, it's sort of going chalk here, but I think the Celtics also get back to the finals, and then we're in for a very, very interesting series between the Thunder and the Celtics, who mirror each other in a lot of ways.
So I have the exact same Western Conference Finals. I just think that Luka and Kyrie, I don't really care what happens in the regular season. You can think that they're going to be the 2 seed. You can think they're going to be the 4 or 5 seed. I don't care. Luka, especially, and then you add in Kyrie, you add in just how much that Luka can maximize Derek Lively. I think that they're going to get back there to the Western Conference Finals, run out of gas a little bit toward the end of the series, but it still goes down as one of the best series of that postseason, and it just ignites this incredible NBA fire and rivalry because we know that Luka is one to wears emotions on his sleeve. You go back and look at Mavericks and Suns fans, they still hate each other for a series that's been irrelevant for 2 or 3, 4 years now. So and now you can play them back-to-back years, and neither team looks to go away. You're not going to go away with Luka, and we know the Thunder aren't going away. This can really catapult to be that next rivalry that the NBA really wants and needs, on top of, we haven't even talked about Wemby and Chet factor of rivalries, but that's in the West. Out East, I can't quit them. It's like a bad habit. I can't quit them. Boston, of course, is there. Give me Philadelphia again. I got rock chalk. I got to stick with Joel Embiid. Somehow they patchwork Embiid and Paul George, and they're healthy. I think Maxi's a phenomenal player. Give me Sixers. Give me Celtics. Eastern Conference Finals. That's your Final Four. And I go Thunder, Boston in the NBA championship.
I'm going with the Thunder winning it all, but the Sixers, I hope for your sake that happens. I just have no faith in that, but I'm bearing the lead here. I have the Thunder winning the finals over the Celtics. That's just my prediction as of today with what we know going into the season, but how are you feeling?
So I think it's insanely tough to repeat. I also think it's insanely tough to, in your second ever playoff run, go win an NBA championship. The fact that we haven't getting this far would continue the streak of anomalies that this core has pulled off since their conception. I'm going to go with Boston to win this series, and either a 6-game, 0-point differential caliber series, or a 7-game series in Boston. And it's not a failure on the Thunder. It's just, hey, they've made these trips multiple times. They've won one. They've just got that pedigree that you still are trying to find. I think that losing the NBA Finals is an insane outcome for this Thunder season. That would still, I think, warrant, just parties in the street, tarps off in the street, drinking down Bricktown, and just a whole out party for Oklahoma City.
Yeah, making the finals is far from a failure. You're going to your second ever finals in franchise history, and that can be your stepping stone to making the next level in the year following, like we just saw with them with the Mavericks in the second round. And if they can make that leap this year and get to the finals and get that experience, it's just going to build from there. So I don't think it's all or nothing, but yeah, I have the Thunder winning this. But even if they lose in the finals, it's not a disappointment.
So rapid fire here for the rest of the NBA. Number one, do you have a surprise postseason team? And I said postseason, so you can add in a surprise play-in team if you want. But do you have a surprise team that you just look at and say, I'm listening to the Bill Simmons pod, I'm listening to all these season previews, you guys are way too down on?
I am going with the Charlotte Hornets. I think that they make the playoffs. They lose in the first round, but I think they make the playoffs. You're seeing all these teams trying to play capture the Cooper flag at the bottom of the East. And I think that there's space for them to move up. I think LaMelo Ball's continuing to develop as a star player. Brandon Miller really impressed me last year. And I think that they are the type of team who's going to have a lot of upward momentum. And I'm sticking with the Hornets as either a play-in team, but I think that they can get the 8th seed.
Wow. I mean, the Trey Mann, Allen Iverson sting is going to be there, if you will. But, I mean, I like the Hornets. I think that they're a spunky little squad. This is a tough question because I think that like if you canvass the NBA landscape, there's a pocket that's claiming everyone because there's just so many take artists that like there's no stone left unturned. Are the Spurs still an underrated postseason team to make the play in? Like I think that would still be surprising a little bit if they leapfrogged the amount of teams that they need to leapfrog. So I think that the Spurs get into the play-in tournament, not the playoffs.
Yeah, and we saw the Thunder a few years ago make that stepping stone in the play-in, then take the leap the next year, and rest is history. So I don't think that's too far-fetched at all for the Spurs. Victor Wembanyama, there's no ceiling on that guy, not just because he's 7'5", but he's unbelievable, and I think we're going to see big strides from him. And the West is so close and so volatile that 3 games here, 2 games there could definitely make a difference. But yeah, I think that's a great pick with the Spurs.
So let's do some NBA awards real quick. We can start with MVP. That's the biggest one. And then if you want to, you can rifle through your Depoy, Koi, and MIP. But NBA MVP, Shai, of course, in the running. He's top 3, 4 in odds. Who's your NBA MVP this season?
I think it's going to come down very close, sort of like the Harden Westbrook MVP year. I think Luka gets it this year. I think he's just going to put gaudy numbers because his team needs him to. And I think we're going to see a lot of nights where Shai doesn't put up the numbers, mainly because his team's up by 10, 15, and he's just sitting on the bench, which is fantastic. It's a good problem to have. But Luka is an analytics darling, and it feels like someone that the NBA is ready to crown with an MVP. I don't think that means that Shai's out of it from then on out, but I think it's close, but Luka gets the nod.
So I'm going to go opposite. I think that those are the two who are going to be in the running because I look at this and say, judging on the voters' history, it would be really unlike them to give Jokic another one, no matter how good he is. And he will be the best player in the league. He will be the player who should win MVP. But it would be such an anomaly to have him get another one because the voters care so much about the legacy and what they did for other guys. And this guy, this Hall of Famer doesn't have this many in this sequence. So I don't think that Jokic will be in the running to no fault of his own. I don't think that Tatum will do enough to win MVP as an individual award. And then you boil it down to, Ant, Luka, Shai. I still consider Luka and Shai to be in a step above where Anthony Edwards is at this point, which I think that Ant is catching up, but they're still a step above. And then with these two guys, I look at who cares more about the regular season, who will play more, and the narrative behind them of Luka still rubs people the wrong way, right, wrong, or indifferent. And Shai, there's already this growing sense after the season of, man, we really should have voted for him last year, huh? And if he can get them to the 1 seed again and make another win jump again, clearly not going to be a 15-win improvement for the 3rd year in a row, but I think that they still will win more than 57 games. So that's another win jump. That's the 1 seed, and they're going to be looking even more so like title contenders than they looked a year ago. I think that Shai gets it, and then next year you really start the run of Luka MVPs. I think that Luka will have every statistic and every imaginable case for MVP. I agree it's going to be an exceptionally close race, but I think it's Shai's year this year, and that Luka will win plenty in his career.
I hope you're right and I'm wrong. I hope it's Shai winning the MVP, but this is how I'm viewing it, but it wouldn't shock me at all. I mean, we're saying it's going to be neck and neck. I think Shai's going to be phenomenal this year, and like you said, he's going to get a lot of backing from last year with people finally noticing just how good he is on both ends and just how effective he is. It feels like the way the Heisman used to be, where you have to have a good year before you can then win the Heisman the next year, but it's going to be an interesting race that will follow throughout the season.
So let's do one more award because there is some Thunder ties to it. Most improved player, Jdub is near the top of the odds. Chet, of course, there as well. There are some people who think that it should be Wemby in his second year. There's some precedent for now that, sadly. Who is your most improved player?
I have Jdub. I think he's going to take a leap this year. I think we're going to see the 3-point volume increase. I think we're going to see him just offensively take the next step in terms of being a more dominant force where he can take over games, and it's not just Shai, obviously, with the Thunder, but we're going to see more times where, Shai's not going to be hot all the time, and Jdub can go, it's fine, I got you for 2 weeks or whatever, or this game. And I think that the rest of the NBA is going to really, really get to recognize that Jdub is one of the most well-rounded players in the NBA.
Yeah, I think that Jdub, like if I have the bold prediction that the three Thunder players are going to make the All-Star game, I have to have a Thunder player winning MIP, I feel like. And I do think it'll be Jdub because I think they'll have that slight edge of like the counting stats, points per game, assists per game, rebounds per game, that slight edge in that category. And let's be honest, these voters are kind of throwing these votes around and they're not quite looking at the defensive impact of Chet Holmgren and everything else. So I will give it to Jdub because I think that he'll have a leap in those counting stats, but mirror the fact that Shai's been able to do his whole career of like every year he has these leaps in production and the efficiency stays steady or improves. I don't think that Jdub will sacrifice efficiency for better production. I think he's that good where he can do both, just like Shai does both. So I think that because of those factors, he's going to win MIP. But if I'm really being honest, I fear the voters are going to give it to Wemby, not because Wemby's not a great player, but I just have this little thing where I don't want to vote for a second year best prospect since LeBron to be MIP. Of course he's going to get better. Like, of course he is.
Yeah, we all expected him to get better. The Spurs develop players really well, but would you throw Chet in that same thing because he was a rookie last year? He's technically in his second year playing.
Yeah, I think that Chet would be in that similar vein where like he's supposed to get better. The Thunder have gotten better around him, not only like just as a team, but they've gotten more suited to tailor themselves toward him because whenever you're playing next to Caruso, who can actually space the floor and you get respect in that area, and you're getting some double big lineups, you've literally accomplished 2 goals in one, where if you're in the crowd of, he's got to play more 4, well, then they can do that. And if you're in the crowd of, well, they've got to space the floor for him more and have this 5 out, let him run some stuff, he can do that now too. So like they've done everything possible to heighten his game, so it is very much expected. And Dub, of course, in year 3. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's just I don't know. I think that Wemby being the top odds getter is kind of blah. I do like the idea of like lottery picks, unless they're like way far removed and then somehow bounce back, kind of like Kobe White in a little bit, that they kind of should be out of the running a little bit. But at the end of the day, Michael, what does it all matter? What does it all mean? You can go find Michael Martin on Twitter at Michael on Sports and Let's Talk Thunder on YouTube. Michael, what are you cooking up? What are we expecting from Michael Martin this season? What is coming out intimately? What's already out?
I've got a few videos out right now. I've got the Guard Dogs video where I put a spotlight on Cason, Lou, and Alex Caruso of just how special they are defensively and how elite they're going to be this season. You get the scoop here, but I'm going to release a Chet video in the next couple weeks I'm really, really excited about. And then just more consistent uploads, just doing like the closing 5 where I do 5 takeaways from each game. But I'm really excited to talk basketball with you and get into this season.
It's going to be a fun season. You get scoops on Locked On Thunder. Thank you, Michael Martin, for joining us again. And until next time, where the preview extravaganza rolls on, be good and be good to one another.